Hello, boys and girls. Our strategy this week is called Point of View. And point of view is who is telling the story when you're reading a text. And if we know who is telling the story, it helps us better understand what's going on in our book and will help us with our comprehension. So when we're thinking of point of view, we're going to focus on two different points of view this week. One is a narrator telling the story. And when the narrator tells a story, they usually are not part of the story, but they're describing things that are going on and telling you the events and the people. And there are some key words that the narrator will use. When you're reading, you'll see words like he and she and they, or maybe names of people. The other point of view we're going to think about this week is called first person. And first person point of view would be told by one of the characters. So they would use words such as I or my or we. And by looking through your text for those key pronouns, it helps us figure out, is this a first person point of view where a character's talking, or is this a third person point of view where the narrator is talking? And that will give us a sense of what is happening in our story to help us understand it. So I have some examples today. The first book is called The Little Leftover Witch, and it was one of my favorite books growing up. And I'm just going to read a little bit in the beginning here, and we'll see if we can determine if this is first person or third person point of view. It's called The Broken Broom. It was Halloween. The wind moaned like 1,000 ghosts at the windows of the houses on Mockingbird Lane. Black cats chased one another across rooftops, and ghosts and goblins of all sizes ran through the streets. Lucinda Doone was dressed like a ghost. A white sheet covered her clothes. It covered her yellow golden hair and small brown shoes. It hid everything about her except two laughing blue eyes which peered out of two round holes. She said boo at Mr. Doone, her father. She said boo at Itchabody, her great black cat. She went all around the block and frightened all the neighbors. Time to go upstairs to bed now, said Mrs. Doone when Lucinda came back into her own house. Halloween is over. So Lucinda took off her ghost costume and hung it up on the clothes tree. She washed her face and hands and put on her warm pajamas and crawled into bed. Then her mother kissed her tenderly and turned out the light. Just as Lucinda was about to close her eyes, she glanced out the window and thought she saw a witch. A black-clad witch riding her broom across a pumpkin yellow moon. The little girl shivered happily and snuggled down under the covers to dream of the excitement she had had that night. So remember, if we want to know who's telling the story, we're going to look for those key pronouns and make sure you take a look at the chart that we've attached on the page. I see her words describing Lucinda Doone, so we have a name. And I see the pronoun she. She booed at Mr. Doone. She booed at the great black cat. So those are clues that this is being told by a narrator. The narrator is kind of looking down on what's happening and explaining it event by event and telling us who is in the story by their name. The other book I have is called I Thought My Soul Would Rise and Fly. And we'll do the same thing. We're going to listen for those pronouns. Dear friend, I woke up this morning thinking about school. Will mistress let me go, I wonder? When we were eating breakfast, James began to talk about names. He said now that we were free, we had to have last names. Cook said she would take her father's name George for her last name. Ruth took Luke's father's name. His name is John, and Luke is John's son, so they will have the same last name of Johnson. Miriam said she would not choose a last name until she saw her mother again. Her mother lives on Master's other plantation on Edisto Island. Ruth asked me what name I would take. I shrugged my shoulders. I started to answer, but Cook spoke for me, like always, instead of letting me finish. She'll be Davis. Most of these people will take the name Davis, especially the ones who have always been here. Now I have something else to think about along with school. I will not take the name Davis. That's master and mistress's name. I will take my time and pick a beautiful name for myself, a name of my own. So I see words like I and my and we and me as I read through this. And those pronouns show me it's told by first person. The girl is actually, our character is actually talking, and it's actually a diary, so it's another good clue that this is a first person account. So this week in your reading, pay attention for those pronouns. Again, they're in the poster attached on our page. And think about, is this a first person point of view or a third person point of view?